Hare Krishna. So today we're just going to do an overview of career Dharma. And I'm sure as many as you know, Srila Prabhupada spent a lot of time asking us to study and implement principles of Varnashram Dharma. We've seen that in our Hare Krishna society, people often argue about the details, but details of things change. And they can change over 20 years. The details of Dharma are constantly shifting, but the principles of Dharma remain eternally. So today we're really just going to be able to go through just an overview, just looking at the big picture, the bird's eye view of the career Dharma system. The book is in process. We're in our final proofreading, and we're also in the process of developing a comprehensive online course. So if you want to get more information and get on our mailing list, please put your name there. Please go to that. I just had a person ask me, how do I get it? So we will announce when it's ready. We plan to have the book in print form, electronic form, and audiobook. And again, have a comprehensive online course. You can also just capture this QR code to get more information. I'd like us all to imagine, let's just imagine for a minute, that our daily life has gradually come to include all the practices and activities that you've always dreamed of, that you really love the work you're doing, what you're producing, and how you're making a meaningful contribution. Your work is giving you the kinds of prosperity that truly enrich you and that you joyfully share with others. So in studying career Dharma, we look at 4 main areas. And we could think of these as an expansion of the understanding of Dharma. I've been listening to Srila Prabhupada talk about the meaning of Dharma. He's speaking on the verse Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanir Bhavati Bharata Bhuchanam Adharmasya Tadatmanam Shrujamyaham. And he's saying that Dharma is the intrinsic nature of a thing. Sugar is sweet, chili is spicy. So at the core of Dharma is what is my nature. And in the career Dharma system, we look at this in 2 aspects. What does it mean to me personally to be prosperous? And which field of work am I in? Once we've understood our Dharma, then we start to look beyond how we can more exhibit that Dharma in society. Taking the next step outward, learning the secrets of making our work deeply meaningful. And once our work is deeply meaningful, then we expand even more to dharmic mastery. All 3 of those are at the individual level. And at the 4th level, we look at the system as a whole. Now, these 4 parts of career Dharma encompass the 9 principles of career Dharma as given in the Shastra. Connecting our nature with our livelihood, advancing through life while nourishing our nature, extending our prosperity to others, having ethical and meaningful work of value, having delight in cherishing our prosperity and field of work, having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work, above the shades of ego. And the last 2 are systems, maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields and competition within the fields, and all-inclusive sustainable prosperity. And here we put these together. You can see that the words career Dharma, here we have the words career Dharma, we have the 4 main divisions, and each of those, first, all but the 3rd one, have 2 principles within them. So again, this is just an overview. we're going to go rather quickly through each of these 4 categories and the 9 principles within them. If you feel you're not getting enough, it's because you're not. We're really just running through in this hour. And we have some videos on YouTube going more into depth into the first category, identifying my prosperity type and career field, from ISKCON Gainesville, from Krishna House, which you can find on their YouTube channel. All right. So the first main area is what's my Swadharma? What's my nature? Identifying in 2 ways, what's my prosperity type and career field. So let's look at that principle of connecting our nature with our livelihood. Yes? So in the Shastra, the point is made very strongly that whatever our nature is should also be our way of living. Let's look first at the prosperity types. So I think we have sort of an automatic knee-jerk reaction to thinking that prosperity means cash. Can you think of anybody you know of, either directly or through the media, who's cash rich, but doesn't really have a rich life? I'm sure we can all think of at least one person, if not many, right? People who have a lot of cash, but they're unhappy. Their life is not actually rich. And do we know anyone, or have we heard of anyone who's cash poor, but happy? And again, I think we all have to say, sure, I know somebody who's cash poor, but leads a very rich life. The reason for that is prosperity is not just cash. Cash is important, undoubtedly. You know, I want to have some cash. Even people like the Amish or, Carmelite monks have some cash. But prosperity is understood in a different way in the Vedic literature. It's understood in 6 different ways. And when we're looking for what is my nature, what career would suit me, we want to see what kind of prosperity is meaningful for me, because different careers bring different types of prosperity. The richness of Aishvarya is a richness of leadership. That can be very satisfying, that you can guide and help so many people as their leader. There's the richness of Gyan, that your job brings you into a situation where you constantly have to be learning. You might like the richness of Virya, where the nature of your work is such that it's always increasing your strength and health. You might want the prosperity of Shri, where your work is bringing beauty or charismatic leadership into your life. Could be beauty, visual beauty, musical beauty. You might want the richness of Yasha, where you're surrounded by a community who's appreciative of your meritorious deeds. And you might like the richness of Vairagya, where you have a lot of autonomy in your life and a lot of freedom. Maybe a freedom in your schedule, freedom to travel, where your work allows you to live in a minimalistic way. Now, not all of these types of prosperities are equally important to all people. Some people really don't want to have much of a community, they're loners. Some people don't want to be in a leadership position. They'd rather just kind of be on a team. Some people are happy to learn what they need to learn and then just basically do their work without having constantly to learn new things. Some people don't particularly care if they have a job that's always demanding physical strength and endurance from them. So people aren't really that concerned as to whether or not their work brings beauty into their life. So different people have different tastes as far as what kinds of prosperity is important to them. Most of us have at least one, if not 2 or 3 different types of prosperity that really are meaningful to us. So like I have a friend who for years was a traveling musician and wrote songs about philosophy. So he had a job that gave him yen because he was constantly having to study It gave him Shri because he was surrounded by music, and it gave him Vairagya. He could have his own hours and was always on the road. Now, our jobs also bring these to other people, but that's not necessarily the same thing. So I might be bringing fame and community to someone else through my work, but I might be in the background. So here we're looking about what kind of prosperity my job brings to me personally. I might be helping other people to have vairagya, but my job might not be giving vairagya to myself. So here we're looking at what kinds of prosperity our job brings to us. All right, again, we're going through this very, very quickly. Somebody asked me if we pray to Krishna to show us, isn't that enough? It can be, of course. Tesham sadhata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam vidadi buddhiyogam tam yenamam upayantite. It can be. But Krishna has given us the Shastra, and Krishna has given us the sadhus. So, you don't want to be like the man that says, please God, save me. And then, the paramedics come to save him, and he says, no, I'm not going to get in the ambulance. I'm waiting for God. Instead of saying maybe God sent the ambulance. All right, now let's look at the four fields. Chaturvanyamaya Shristam Gunakarma Vibhagashaha Tasya Kartarm Apimam Vidyakartam Avyayam. So this is another way of understanding our nature. The 6 types of prosperity really hone us into a specific type of job. And these 4 career fields are much broader. Now, my co-author, Urmila Devi Dasi, who I think is in this class, that's not Anuttama's wife, Rukmini. She's also known as Dr. Ruchira Datta. We deliberated long and hard about why did Krishna divide all the different kinds of work into 4 categories? I mean, why? Why not just talk about hundreds of thousands of careers? And why these 4 categories? And our main conclusion is that the Dharma of each of these 4 fields is different. And not only different, but they're in opposition to one another. They're contradictory to one another. The Dharma in the field of artistry is in opposition to the Dharma of the field of resources. Now, we're not here using the Sanskrit names. We're using artistry, resources, ideas, government, because people already come in with certain conceptions of the Sanskrit terms that may be erroneous. So let's look at them just briefly. So in the field of artistry, these people provide all the rasa in society. They're the ones who provide all the taste, all the pleasures. In artistry, there are very clearly defined standards of excellence and what kind of training is required to achieve that excellence. It's the least abstract of the fields. This is the people who provide all the function in society. They make society work. Without people in the field of artistry, society falls apart. And they also provide all the beauty in society. So some of us like to do things that are artistic or service careers, something where we get to hone a craft. We might want to move in the world in a way that people find useless or inspiring. And the main question people ask about the value of their work is am I being supportive? Am I creating beauty? Often if you see people working in this field and you say, thank you for making the world a more beautiful place, they'll just light up. Right? Am I being supportive? Am I creating beauty? I might mention that a lot of us have hobbies that are similar to the work in this field, but it might not be the work that we'd want to do for 8 or 10 hours a day. So many of us, to relax, maybe we do a little bit of gardening, or we do some embroidery or some carpentry, but we wouldn't necessarily want to work as a seamstress or a carpenter. All right, let's move on to the field of resources. So these are people who want to expand wealth and profit. They're absorbed with how to use resources effectively and efficiency and to distribute products. This is a little bit more abstract because concepts of an ideal worker in this field are going to vary considerably from one culture to another and even within a culture. How one can be successful in this field is much more abstract than in the field of artistry. These are the only people who are actually producing wealth for society. They're the only people. They're transforming natural resources into wealth. And Bhagavatam says these people are always thirsty. That doesn't mean they always have to drink water. No, it means that they always want to expand. They always want to expand. They want to expand profit for themselves and for society in general. And the questions they ask about their work are, is it sustainable and regenerative? They want to make sure that their ways of creating wealth can be sustained and regenerate over time. And they want that for themselves and for society. The next main field is that of government. And because we're social animals, anything beyond a very simple society needs some form of governance. Now, this doesn't mean managers of anything, right? You can be a manager in the field of artistry, in the field of resources. Here we're talking about managing society in general. And the main difference is that, say, in a business, they're the leaders just responsible for their particular business, whereas in government, people are responsible for the society as a whole. Now, this field doesn't just encompass legal governments. It also encompasses non-governmental organizations, NGOs, that do the work of government, that make sure that the whole infrastructure is in place, right? For people to get food and water and medical and roads and protection. It also applies on a micro scale to landlords. So if you own an apartment complex or a house, that's like your little mini government that you're making sure that your renters have what they need and you're living off their rent. So these are the people who provide all the protection and the care for society. They're kind of like the big parents of society in making sure that there's peace and protection, that people have everything that they need. They're the arms, and the arms to hold and care, and the arms to protect. They collect the wealth from the field of resources, and they distribute it throughout the society. Then we have the field of ideas. Oh, we should say that the people in the field of government, their main questions about their work, whether or not their work is satisfying, is it just, like is injustice, and is it honorable? The people in this field, the main concerns about their work are justice, morals, ethics, virtue, and so forth. Then going on to the field of ideas, these are the people who provide wisdom, truth, guidance for society, work in research, study, teaching, counseling, therapeutic jobs, religious instruction, training, ritual, worship. Now, these are people who communicate truth and wisdom. It can be through words, it can be through mathematics, and it can be through the fine arts. Saraswati is the goddess of both truth and art. So if someone is using music just for the purpose of rasa, if they're using music just for pleasure, that's in the field of artistry. If they're using music to communicate truth, that's in the field of ideas. So the main questions people in this field ask about their work is, am I adding to the truth and wisdom of the world? So that's a very little introduction to the four fields. So what are the main questions we'd have about the work that we do? Do we want to be adding beauty and support to the world, sustainable regenerative wealth, honor and justice and morals and ethics and virtue, or truth and wisdom? Now, people ask all the time, can I be in more than one field? The answer is no. And we'll get into this in more detail very soon. One can certainly have more than one type of prosperity that one wants to enjoy through one's work. Right? Like, I have a daughter who's a Bharatanatyam teacher, and she's getting virya or strength through her work because she's dancing. She's also getting gyan through her work because it involves a lot of study, and she's also getting shri through her work because her work is adding beauty to her life. So one can have a career that pulls on more than one type of prosperity, but one cannot be in two fields at once. One can be in one field that directly supports another field. Or there are many people in the field of artistry that directly work under those in the field of ideas, or directly work under those in the field of government, or directly work under those in the field of resources. But because the dharma of the fields are contradictory to one another, you'd always be at odds with yourself if you were in more than one field. And Krishna says that even if you think you can do someone else's work well, if you go on someone else's path, that's going to be very dangerous. I mean, one way we can understand that's dangerous is you'd have to pretend to be something that you're not. And no actor can do that all the time. It's exhausting, right? The actors eventually, they have to take off their costumes and makeup, and they have to be themselves. Second. Now, Krishna calls doing someone else's work, he says, your work will become a vehicle of fear, a vehicle of fear. And Urmila and I have thought and researched long and hard as to why this is so. We have 2 chapters in our book on this topic. And one reason is that when I'm doing the work that's my nature, that work is intrinsically satisfying to me. It's an expression of who I am. When I'm doing someone else's work, no matter how expertly I appear to do it in terms of the craft of that work, I'm not really getting satisfaction from it because it's not me. Therefore, I'm going to try to take satisfaction in the money that I'm paid, or the acclaim that I get, or the facility that I get, all of which are external, and all of which are going to fill me with fear. I'm also going to have a much harder time doing work in a detached fashion because I'm so attached to the externals and the fruits of that work. As someone asked, suppose you're asked to work in a field that's not yours. You can do anything for a very short period of time as an emergency, but emergency should be very rare and very brief. And you should know yourself well enough so that you don't agree to work a long time in something that's not you. Another very important thing to understand is the difference between an initial inclination to a field and expertise in the field. So the Shastra pretty much only describes those who have dharmic expertise in each of these 4 fields. There's not much explanation given in Shastra of what sort of propensities one would notice for an untrained person. This point is quite significant because Srila Prabhupada talks about the fact that workers in these 4 fields exist in every society in the world. But if they don't know the dharma of that field, they may be doing it terribly. So what we want to look for in ourselves to determine what is our nature is not whether we have already achieved the dharmic expertise. We're not going to see, hey, am I already at the level of dharmic expert in this field? We want to look at, do I have an inclination for this field? Do I have a propensity for this field? All right, we've already looked at the first principle, connecting our nature with our livelihood. And now, how do we want to advance through life while nourishing our nature? Krishna tells us here that our nature in Bhagavad Gita 3:33, that our nature cannot be repressed. That fact is very important before we figured out who we are and what our nature is, or if we're training others in their nature. It's something that can't be repressed. We are going to act according to our nature, whether or not we're trained in it, whether or not we're paid for it, whether or not we're asked to do it. Sometimes children's annoying behavior, repeatedly annoying behavior, is indicative of their nature. Like I know one child that was always being corrected. Why are you minding other people's business? Why are you always trying to make sure everybody follows the rules? Why are you always so aware of what everybody else is doing? Just mind your own business. And it turned out that he was an expert leader and manager. Very famous story. It's you can find it on YouTube, of this one man who was always getting in trouble in school for making noise. And one time when he was 10 years old, one of his teachers said, "I want to meet you after class. What's going on?" I don't know, bet you're in trouble again. And the teacher gave him a pair of drumsticks and said, "You should be a drummer," which is what he became. He became a very famous drummer. Another important aspect of this principle is that when we're young, we should be training for our career. When we're in the prime of life, we live according to we maintain ourselves by our career. When we reach middle age, we retire and we can train others. And when we reach old age, we retire completely and we prepare for death. So our career is really only defines us in the prime part of life, although we prepare for it when we're young and we may guide others in it in middle age. Okay, now we're at the second main area. So we've gotten that core of Dharma, understood what is my Swadharma. What is my nature? We've identified it. We've nourished it, right? Now we're going to move out a little bit and really find satisfaction and purpose in our work. And we have two ways of doing this. The first is by extending our prosperity to others. The Sanskrit word for a kind of wealth is bhaga, which comes from the root word bhaj, meaning to divide or share. So wealth means that which is shared. At the most basic level, we want to share work with our family. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, "Because I wanted to earn wealth, I got a wife." Most people think, because I have a wife, I have to earn money. But he understood that if you want to have a livelihood, you need to have someone to share it with, at least a spouse or children or the animals who live in your area, somebody. And preferably one should be sharing wealth in general with those who are less fortunate. Now, this sharing of wealth is not the same as, say, using your wealth for the propagation of spiritual life. That's in another category. But this is sharing your wealth with others. Now, remember, we talked about wealth as being not just cash. So the wealth I get is also in these 6 areas. And I should not only share the cash that I receive from my work, but I should also be sharing the type of prosperity that I am getting from my work. So in our book, we go into this in great detail. In this chart, you can just see a few ideas. I'll give you a moment to take a look at this chart. But for example, let's say I'm enjoying freedom in my work. I can also help other people to enjoy freedom in their life. If I'm getting a lot of opportunities for the satisfaction of leadership in my work, I can also use that leadership in various charitable causes. If I get a lot of knowledge in my work, I can share my knowledge freely with those who are less fortunate and so forth. So in some way, we should be sharing our wealth, both in terms of cash and in terms of these 6 types of prosperity. And in fact, the Shastra states that how much prosperity we have in this life is directly proportional to how much we shared our prosperity in previous lives, or also in this life. And I think that's very logical, right? If Krishna sees that we're hoarding, he's going to give us just enough for ourselves. And if he sees that we're sharing and we're using, then he's going to give us enough to share. All right, the next, principle 4, doing ethical and meaningful work of value, gives us satisfaction and purpose in our work. So not only am I doing work according to my nature, but I know that the work is honest work and really helps others. So what do we mean by honest work? We mean that the work is fair to the worker, to the consumer, to the employer, to everybody. Now, I'd say in 2023, it's pretty hard to find work that's absolutely honest. It's hard to find work that has no type of exploitation. But as far as possible, there should be an honest price being charged for the goods and services that we produce, and everybody should be treated fairly. Then we want to have work that provides for real needs. There's unfortunately a lot of modern work, and perhaps this has always been true, but especially at the present time, that just manufactures needs. Right? I mean, just creates some need you really don't have, and tries to sell you something that doesn't add any real value to your life. So we don't want to do that kind of work. We want to do work that's adding genuine value to people's life and is honest. Certainly, we don't want to do work that causes harm to others. So we don't want to, work in the tobacco industry, for example, which is going to be doing harm to others. Another way that our work can be purposeful and meaningful is to get out of what we call the cycle of frustration. So most people do ordinary Dharma. We're talking just about doing ethical work and work of value. That's Dharma. And then they get their arta, they get their prosperity. They use their prosperity for enjoyment, which gives them rasa. But material rasa is inherently frustrating. And so after some time, a person wants liberation. And a person, just said, can we get free of this whole, doing good work to get good prosperity, to enjoy in this world. And it's just frustrating. Maybe people get into liberation movements, or maybe they aim for some kind of religious thing. But after a while, again, they want to enjoy rasa, because in liberation, there's not really any rasa. So again, they go back to ordinary Dharma to enjoy its benefits and try to get rasa out of that. And again, they look for liberation. So one should get above the cycle of frustration, and one should do one's work out of love. The most meaningful and honest work of value is that which is done out of love. Now, another way of understanding doing ethical work of an is we're going to go back to the concept we looked at in our first main area of not doing others' work. And this is a admonition that Krishna gives twice in the Bhagavad Gita: don't do others' work. So we talked about how doing others' work makes it very difficult to do detached work, and also that it's inauthentic. But let's look briefly, again, very briefly. In our book, we go into much, much more detail. And in our full course, we go into much more detail. So we're just skimming the surface here. So we're looking at here is someone who has the nature of one field, the intrinsic nature of one field, artificially working in another field. So here, let's look at government and resources. If someone has the nature of a person in government, but they're working in the field of resources, or they have the nature of someone in the field of resources and they're working in the field of government. So what are our big differences here? Well, government needs to look at the whole picture. It needs to care about everybody. In resources, you're just caring about your specific industry. In resources, your dharma is to be profit-minded. You have to put your own seatbelt on first, your own oxygen mask on first. You have to make sure that you are making a profit, because you have to make sure you have the ability to provide resources for the whole society if necessary. That's the dharma of the field of resources. The dharma of the field of government is quite different. The dharma of the field of government, think about a firefighter, a police officer. They're going to run into danger. Actually, the name Abhimanyu means to run into danger. Those in the field of resources have to be protective. Those in the field of government have to run into danger. So if somebody in the field of resources works in the field of government, they're going to have a hard time being properly generous and taking care of everybody. And those in the field of government work in the field of resources, they're going to have a hard time making a profit and having wealth that's sustainable and regenerative. Let's look at government and ideas. A person with the nature of government working in ideas, or a person with the nature of ideas working in government. Now, both of these fields are concerned with long-range vision and whole system, but government is dealing with practical action, not just theory. If a person with the nature of government works in the field of ideas, they may neglect looking at the theory because they just want to get right down to practical. And a person with the nature of ideas tries to work in the field of government, they may not be able to make the swift decisions based on incomplete research. Everything's going to seem too harsh and hastily arrived at. Also, those in the field of government, they have to instill national pride and loyalty, which is going to seem really foolish to people in the field of ideas, and they're going to have a hard time uniting the country. Crossing ideas and resources. Again, a person with the nature of ideas, if they work in resources, or a person with the nature of resources, if they work in the field of ideas. To people who have the nature of ideas, work in resources, it's going to look self-centered and materialistic. The people in resources have a practical system of ethics. And if they work in the field of ideas, everything just seems theoretical and useless to them. They're people in the field with the nature of resources working in ideas, they're going to think it's unethical to be researching pure mathematics. What's anyone going to use that for? And if someone in the field of ideas works in resources, they're going to think it's unethical to make a profit and the business is going to fail. Look at the cross of government and artistry. Somebody with the nature of government working in artistry, somebody with the nature of artistry working in government. In government, they want to expand. They always want to protect more people. They always want to protect better. In artistry, people tend to be very self-satisfied. People in artistry tend to be satisfied if they have a decent place to live and they can hone their craft and they're surrounded by family and comforts. And so if people who are in the nature of government work in the field of artistry, they're going to end up polluting the beauty of the craft, trying to expand it. And if people in the field of artistry work in the field of government, they're going to be easily corrupted by someone who's offering basic comforts. And it's going to be hard for them to get in this mood of protecting others and sacrificing their own comforts. If somebody with the nature of ideas works in the field of artistry, or somebody with the nature of artistry works in the field of ideas, this particular crossing in the Shastra is most condemned. Now, people in each of these fields tend to be self-satisfied, but in very different ways. The people in the field of artistry tend to be satisfied, as we said, with basic creature comforts. If I have good food and I have a warm place to sleep and I have a loving romantic partner and I'm good at my work, they're satisfied. People in the field of ideas, if they have an inner life of the mind and intellect, they're satisfied and they're not very interested in creature comforts. So keep in mind that some of the people in fine arts are actually in the field of ideas. The problem here is that the people in the field of ideas have to have this very detached, non-sensual view of the world in order to provide unadulterated truth. And the people in the field of artistry are providing all of the sensual happiness for all of society. People in the field of ideas are the eyes, and the people in the field of artistry, it's like that's all the wonderful tastes of the world. Imagine putting the tastes in your eyes, putting tasty food in your eyes. All right, crossing resources and artistry. If somebody with the nature of resources works in artistry, somebody with the nature of artistry works in resources. Now, both of these fields deal with the practical needs of society, but people in artistry tend to concentrate on the craft, the quality, the satisfaction of a job well done. Those in resources tend to focus on profit, expansion, quantity. If somebody with the nature of resources goes into the field of artistry, they're going to tend to automate it. They're going to tend to destroy the craft. If someone with the nature of the field of artistry goes into the field of resources, they're interested with simple pleasures, not with sustainable regenerative wealth. And so, they may make factories that pollute the environment because they're not really concerned with doing something that's sustainable. Again, this is brief. In our full course and in our book, we go into these crossovers in far more depth. All right, so now we've gone from just my own satisfaction and being my own self, nurturing it, to expanding to help others, right? Through having purposeful, ethical work. And now we're going to go to dharmic mastery. And here we have 3 principles. So this is all the other areas have 2 principles. This has 3. So let's look at the first, to cherish our prosperity and our field of work. So this is understanding that all 6 kinds of wealth can either be the Lord's inferior or superior energy. The inferior energy is using them as exploitation. The superior energy is seeing them as the Lord's consort. To cherish our sources of prosperity means to cherish Lakshmi Devi, Srimati Radharani herself. The opposite of this concept is like the person who cuts off the head of the goose who lays the golden egg, or who cuts off the limb of the tree that nourishes them. Cherishing means taking care of our physical health in our work, taking care of our mental health in our work, taking care of the people we work with, under us, treating everybody with respect and civility. It means making sure that our work cares for the air and the water and the land, that none of these are being damaged. We could also look very specifically, and again, we go into much more detail, about how we can cherish the sources of our prosperity. If I'm getting Aishvarya, I also want to make sure other people feel smart and competent. If I'm getting Gyan, remember that I can be wrong and develop my emotional side. If I'm getting Virya, make sure that I'm producing things that are healthy, food, fabric, medicines. Use my strength for the good of others. Don't artificially, chemically enhance my strength. If I'm getting Shri, don't misuse beauty to bewilder people. If I'm getting Yasha, make sure that I stick to acting honorably within my community. And if I'm getting Vairagya, make sure that I'm sacrificing for the sake of others and for ideals. Then keeping the fields pure. And this is again, a partial list. It's a very brief overview. And this is one of the big problems in society is people are not cherishing their field of work. If I'm in the field of artistry, I cherish my field by having high quality in my craft, by treating my customers with respect, by having my prices honest. If I'm in the field of resources, I actually protect the plants and the animals with loving kindness, take care of the environment, have all my financial dealings honest. If I'm in the field of government, I make sure that serving people is the top, right? In resources, you have to put projects over people. In government, you have to put people over projects. In government, you have to sacrifice your own interests for the greater good and not have any special interests, treat everybody equally, equality of justice, making sure wealth is not used for personal gain. In ideas, you have to make sure truth is applied beneficially and being neutral and impartial and objective to make sure that no one else controls you financially, to respect others' expertise. Again, this is very short list. Let's look now at the next principle. Again, we're at this wide circle of dharmic mastery. We want to make sure we have celebrations of the sacred in our life and in our work. Rubini and I are translating the word yajna as celebrations. So in Bhagavad Gita 3:16, Krishna talks about evam pravaditam chakram. And Srila Prabhupada gives a nice class about this, where he says that this circle of this chakra, this circle of dharma, of sacrifice, of celebration, it's always moving. In nature, we see this happens naturally. The plants and the animals, they take from nature and they give back to nature. They take from nature, they give back to nature. In human beings, we have a choice. We are taking so many things: sunlight, air, moonlight, water, earth, fruit, vegetables, minerals, metals, so many things. And we have to give back. We have to keep this chakra moving. We have to intentionally give back through celebration of the divine. Now, there's various ways and rituals according to different genuine religious systems. But in every part of human society, there's some way of making sure that in our work, we're giving back to the divine. We want to get to the point where we're living life with a thrill at every moment, as Prabhupada says in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, because every act becomes yajna, as explained nicely in Gita 4:24, where everything we do becomes a ceremony of connection. But at very least, at this level of dharmic mastery, we want to have, at least on a regular basis, some deliberate ceremony of connection with the divine. Now we're going to look at the seventh principle of career dharma in this progression to dharmic mastery. And that is, we want to learn how to do our work above the shades of ego. So these are the three shades of ego. A shade hides our awareness. We can think of our natural awareness as being outside. Sattvic shade is like having a clear glass window, but it has a frame around it. The Rajas shade is like having a translucent window, like you might find in a bathroom or a shower. And the Tamas shade is like you have a curtain over your window. All of these can infect our work. The Tamas shade is, I'm not ambitious. I'm satisfied in life. I've got my work, I've got my food, got my dog, I got my partner, got my football game, got my bag of chips. I'm just, hey, I'm a simple, happy person. I'm not ambitious. Don't cross me. Hey, don't cross me. I can get back at you and defend my family. Yeah, I'll do good things if it's easy. If a vegan burger is the same price, and it's at the same, shop, I'll get it. If they don't have it, then I'll get the meat one. Whatever. I'm going to do whatever's easiest. Then the Raja shade is, I am a very righteous person. I am building the world. I am doing good for the world. I am building great institutions of art and music and hospitals and schools. My statue is going to be in the park, my name in the history book. I am a very good and religious person, and I want you to notice it. I am the great builder of society. Then the Sattvic shade is, I'm very spiritual. I'm very balanced. I'm very forgiving, not because I want you to notice it, but because it just feels so good to be forgiving. I just love everyone, and I'm really not very ambitious in life. So those are the three shades of ego. And there's something like the dark side of our work. So depending in what work we have, we might particularly want to draw on tamas, rajas, or sattva in order to do our work, or our work may tend to trip us up in one of these shades. So we really have to do our work without any of those shades of ego. Let's take a look at charity. We talked already in the second area, in the third principle, about sharing our resources. So in the shade of sattva, then we're charitable because it just feels good. It's the right thing to do. I'm just doing it because it's right. Don't want anything. And make sure I give to right people. In rajas, I give charity because I am a dharmic person, and I know if I give charity, I'll also become righteous. Or, yeah, all right, I've been asked to give charity. I really don't want to give to this person, but, I've been asked to, and so, all right, I guess I'll give to them. Why did I give to them? In tamas, it's, yeah, you're a good person. Here, take some charity, or just give to anybody without consideration. The way that we should be sharing our prosperity is something like in sattva, but to please our source. Looking at the shades of ego while we're at work, under the shades of tamas, disengaged, base, stubborn, insulting, lazy, morose, procrastinating. In rajas, attached, wanting to get the results of work, greedy, envious and aggressive towards others, always being affected by joy and sorrow. In sattva, without any false identification, with great determination, without wavering, always steady. But we want to be above all of them. How can we do that is in Bhagavad Gita 3:30. 3 things to let go of and 3 things to get. 3 things to let go of. To not want to enjoy our 6 kind of prosperities on this give and take plane. To not think I'm an owner and to not be lazy like I'm in a fever. What to do to dedicate my work to the ultimate source, to Krishna, to be aware that I'm a soul and to make sure I work according to my nature. All right, now we're looking at the whole system. This is our 4th area, looking at the whole system for peace and prosperity. Srila Prabhupada used the term peace and prosperity 195 times in his books and lectures. So here we're looking at 2 principles. Let's look at principle 8, maintaining societal balance, having cooperation between the fields and competition within the fields. And again, we are looking at it here, just skimming the surface. All right, cooperation. People and ideas, they train others. People in government, they approve licensing and accreditation. They may provide venues or facilitators to help launch, repair, and maintain cooperative endeavors. The people in resources, they organize, direct, and distribute the flow of money, materials, energy, and other resources. And artistry has joint endeavors with all of these to provide the support system. Each of these fields provides a check and balance on the honesty and integrity of those in the other fields. Those in ideas hold government to the rule of law, government regulates through law, resources through the flow of money, and artistry through their numbers. But within the fields, there's competition. And this competition, it helps build the quality of the fields. It helps everyone in the fields to strive to do their best. Prabhupada says competition gives life. Seeing others do great things reminds us of our potential. It pushes us to explore the edges of our own abilities. It focuses our mind. But competition should be friendly and respectful, not predatory. Just like there's the jewelry district in Los Angeles, where all the jewelry stores are in the same area. And that kind of competition brings wealth for all of them. Same with the fashion district of New York. But we're not interested in a nasty competition that tries to erase or harm or exploit the other. Competition in the field of artistry has led to so many inventions, masterpieces of art. Competition in the field of resources has what enables the population to come to 8 billion while supplying most people's physical needs. Competition within the field of government, that's what enables more quality in the field of government between the different political parties, between the different forms of government, to provide healthcare, mass transit systems, and so forth. Competition within the field of ideas. This is what brings us the philosophies and the worldviews and the religions and helps bring us the purity of religions that can adjust to changing circumstances in life. And the last principle is to have all-inclusive, sustainable prosperity. Modern economics is taught divorced from the main source of prosperity, which is land. And land is finite. Our earth is finite. Any economic growth models that are divorced from the concept of having finite resources are not going to provide prosperity for everyone in a sustainable way. So the last systematic principle of career Dharma is that we should have overall economic systems that are tied to the actual finite resources of the earth. So again, looking at the 4 areas, at the core, identifying our career field type and prosperity type to know who am I. Then taking that and expanding it to sharing with others and doing honest, ethical work. Expanding that further to dharmic mastery by cherishing our prosperity and field of work, having celebrations of the sacred and working above the shades of ego, and then finally looking at the whole system, having the balance of cooperation, competition, and checks and balances, and having an economic model that provides for sustainable prosperity. In this way, the 9 principles of career Dharma are included within these 4 categories. So again, this was just touching on everything. We could spend an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 on each of these principles. And we do have a complete course in the works, and well as our book that's almost finished. If you're interested, please get on our mailing list, which you can do by going to this site, or if you want to just get this QR code. And here Krishna is telling us at the end of the Bhagavad Gita that Swe Swe Karma Nyabiratha Samsiddhim Labhate Nara Swakama Nirata Siddhim Yata Vindati Chakchunu. By following his qualities at work, everyone can become perfect. Now please hear from me how this can be done. So we have gone for an hour, so I don't know if we have any time for questions at all.
Yes, we do, Mataji. Sorry, just give me 1 second.
Okay, so someone asked, when we're young, we are often trained without realizing our true purpose. Well, we'd like to put an end to that. We'd like to have young people being trained in their actual nature before they go into a career. So the modern system where people go into a career without knowing who they are is definitely causing harm in society. And then we have Mahalakshmi saying, how do I know to what extent I want to please Krishna? Well, do it whatever extent you have now and build on it. How do we integrate our Dharma based in our gender and our Dharma based in our Varna? I'm not sure what that means. Sorry, dear Russell, would you please explain your question? Sorry, dear Russell, she wrote a question in the chat, and then is she not here?
Doesn't seem like, but there is another question for sure.
Okay. Well, let's take a question from people who are here.
Okay. Does anybody have a question here today?
Do ISKCON Kshatriyas or anyone who is spreading music or bhajans to spread the message come under the ambit of ideas people or kirtaniyas? It could be one of the two. Like, let's say that you have somebody who's in the field of artistry and they create music primarily for the pleasure that music brings to people, that their main motive for creating music is rasa, is pleasure. And they then want to offer that music to the Lord. So they may also have music that brings people pleasure, but that glorifies the Lord because they're spiritualizing their work in the field of artistry. But their motive is to bring pleasure. Their motive is to bring enjoyment to people, and they're doing that with glorifying the Lord. Then you might have other people that their main mission in life, the main thing they want to do with their work is to bring truth and wisdom to people, and they may want to do that through music. Their music may be beautiful, but that's not the main thing they want to achieve. The main thing they want to achieve is truth and wisdom. And if they're using their music to glorify Krishna, then they're spiritualizing their work in the field of ideas. That's an excellent question. Do I offer career counseling advice on a personal level? I've done that with thousands of people for at least a decade. And it's a lot of that work which has led me to work with Rukmini, to work on this book and this course. Am I doing that in any kind of a formal way right now? No. Like, do I have, some shingle out? Scientists are generally in the field of ideas, generally. But some people with a scientific bent are actually working in one of the other fields and thus polluting their nature in the field.
Okay. Does anybody have a question here today? Looks like Mataji, that's it for the questions.
Okay, somebody wants me to put the link in the chat. That'll take me a minute.
Okay.
The title of the book is Career Dharma, the Natural Art of Work. It has not yet been released. Yes, Rukmini wrote, technicians working on science may be in the field of artistry. Rukmini, can you stick the link in the chat, please? Does anyone else have any questions?
There's one more on the chat.
I don't have the full seminar right now on YouTube. I just have a part of it. I haven't taught everything. I've just taught a part of it. I taught it in Krishna House, and that should be on YouTube.
We'll be uploading this.
And we are recording this session as well,
I'm
Mataji.
recording this, yeah. But I've gone into much further depth. I gave 3 hours of classes in Gainesville on this topic instead of 1 hour, 3 hours. So that's it. They're going to be at the Gainesville. Yeah. Oh, can you find your nature via astrology? I believe in astrology. I'm very skeptical of astrologers. And I would really, really, really caution anybody who's going to rely on astrologers for more than a piece of this. You could certainly use astrology, palmistry, personality tests as an aid in this, but if you rely on them exclusively, I'm just a little concerned that a lot of these arts it's hard to find proper practitioners. So this is, and I've just seen many, many cases of somebody just looking at the nakshatra of the moon, and just from looking at the nakshatra of the moon, telling people what field they're in. That's a bunch of nonsense. Business, technical, creative consultants would fall into what category? I'm not sure if that's enough description. Rukmini, how would you respond to that? Yeah, it depends. It's too vague of a description.
I believe
Well,
that's it for the questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for the wonderful lecture. Your lectures always been very educational. Thank you for giving us your association and time. We really appreciate it. And hope to see you again in the future. Thank you very much, Urmila Prabhu.
Thank you very much.